Hey everyone, this is Mr. Morrow. I'm going to teach you to make optimized profiles for the various classic mini consoles using the RetroTINK-4K. The RetroTINK-4K is an advanced scaler, so it's highly recommended that you familiarize yourself with the settings by going through the RetroTINK-4K wiki, which is going to be in the description. The classic mini consoles are currently not on the wiki, but the steps that are taken to extract sort of the original resolution of these is going to be on the wiki for using various different options. And just so that you guys know, I'm going to be using the Neo Geo Classic Mini, then the PlayStation Classic Mini, then the Sega Genesis, then the Super Nintendo, then the Famicom Classic Mini, in that order to go sort of from least compliant to most compliant in regards to how easy it is to extract the original resolution from it. These are just the 5 that I have. I personally do not have either the TurboGrafx Mini or the Sega Genesis Mini 2, so I won't be able to give any advice on how to sort of extract the original resolution from those consoles, but you're more than welcome to create one of your own videos so that you can, or try things out yourself and report back to either the RetroTink Discord or maybe edit the RetroTink wiki to add your settings as well. So just to start, I'm going to start with the Neo Geo Classic Mini. Just so you know, the Neo Geo Classic Mini is probably one of the worst classic mini consoles that you can get because there is nothing to do. There's really nothing you can do to extract the original resolution or the original picture from it. It just adds too much image processing to the picture. It's making it really, really difficult to extract that information. So Neo Geo games are all rendered in 320 by 224. This is just something that's known. And when it comes to Neo Geo Classic Mini, you can go into the screen, into the settings. When you go to screen, the best thing you can do is switch from this first option, which makes everything widescreen, to this option, which makes everything in 4:3. When it comes to the bottom, you want everything to be squished a little in to try to extract something that resembles the original picture. But after that, there's really not much you can do. Image quality optimization on and off. This just adds a smoothing filter when it's on, which is something that we don't want. We want to turn basically everything off. So let's go ahead and start Garo Mark of the Wolves. And all of these are sort of going to be the home versions of the game. So when you do that, you can go into practice so that you can take a look. And as you can see, this is already pretty soft. There's really not much you can do to sharpen the image up anymore. But let's just take a look and see what the resolution is so that we can take a look and see if we can sort of extract the original one from the picture. And that would mean that it would have a height of, it would be about 672 by 960, or rather 960 by 672. And when you do trim this, as I usually do, you see that it is actually bigger, non-integer scaled larger, non-integer scaled larger than it should be. So even if we were to do prescale and decimation to try to extract the 320 by 224, this just sort of wouldn't work, and you would not get an accurate picture. So unfortunately, the best thing that you can do with the Neo Geo Classic Mini is leave it in its sort of default state, and maybe go from the squish screen to the bigger screen and turn image optimization on or off. That's up to you, but essentially there is nothing else that you can do to get an optimized screen from this. As you can see, this is fully this is fully taking up the full vertical space, but we sort of don't want that, but this is sort of as best as it can get. Unfortunately, SNK decided that the best way to sort of play this is either on the little arcade machine itself, or on the big screen with a lot of image processing on it. So let's go to the PlayStation 1 Classic Mini. I've already loaded Final Fantasy VII, and this is a very specific example because my PlayStation 1 Mini is hacked. If it is not hacked, you'd have to do the same thing with the Neo Geo Classic Mini, which is just leave it on default. But now that it is hacked, I'm sorry, just to show you, it does do a little bit of a bilinear scale to 720p. So if we were to do a trim to find out what the original resolution is, you would find that instead of being 672, it is not entirely scaled to the correct resolution of 638 on the vertical. And then the horizontal is at 911, or 910, depending on how you do it. So let's bring the left trim in one. So it's 910 instead of 960, and 638 instead of 672. So what we can do is, now that this is hacked with Project Eris, by the way, but hold select and press the triangle button, and this brings up a quick menu. And you are able to select texture filter off. And what that does is it actually brings it undoes the bilinear scale, and this already looks very, very sharp. So what you can do is go into the scaling menu and trim the picture. And things are already looking good. So this screen here is 320 by 224. So when you do the trims and bring everything to where it needs to be, you see here that you get an image of 672 by 960, which is the exact 320 by 224 triple scaled. So what you can do in this case, let's load the default profile one more time. We're gonna go into the ADC menu, the HDMI receiver setup, and increase input pixels to 3, and then go to the crop scale setup and increase vertical prescale to 1/3. Now what this does, let's actually do autofill integer and then trim the picture one more time. And as you can see, now that we've done this, we've actually extracted the 320 by 224 resolution of any 320 by 224 screen on the PlayStation. However, things get tricky when you pull up a screen that is anything but 320 by 224. Just as an example, you're going to see here that this menu is not looking correct. A lot of the text does not look right. There's a lot of weird scaling issues happening here, and that is because the menus will render at 384 by 224, or any other resolution. PlayStation games use up to 10 different resolutions of using 5 different horizontal resolutions or horizontal sampling rates. So unfortunately, the best thing you can do in this case is leave your PlayStation, leave the horizontal decimation as off, and then you can vertical prescale 3, and that should allow you to use scan lines that go horizontally through the picture in an accurate way. They just won't work in any horizontal effects. Sorry, any vertical effects just won't look correct. And again, this is only for hacked PlayStation 1 Classic Minis. You are unable to, you can't really use this in any other situation, but that's fine. The PlayStation 1 Classic Mini is also not a great mini console, but if you do want to have some sort of scanline effects with this, this is pretty much where you would start. Okay, so now that we've done the PlayStation Classic Mini, let's move on to the Sega Classic Mini. Okay, this is currently on the sort of like free play mode. My Classic Mini is not hacked, by the way, but, oh, and it is sort of pre-scaled already. My Classic Mini is not hacked, but let's take a look at a typical Sega game. But before we do that, let's go ahead into options. And we need to make sure that when we go to screen settings, that it is on 4:3, which is the default setting. We do not want it to be in 16:9 because that is plainly incorrect. So now that we're here, let's go into a typical Sega game. Let's use Sonic 2. Oh, and I messed up already because I have the background on, which is fine. You can have the background on because of what we're going to do, but you also might want to turn the background off in case you didn't want to use it. So, okay, we've got Sonic 3. We've got Sonic 2 up. Most Genesis games run in 320 by 224. And this plainly upscales it 3 times in every direction. So what we can do is go into the HDMI receiver setup menu, or just press the ADC button on the remote, increase input pixels to 3, then press the scale button on the remote, taking us to the scale crop setup menu, and then increase vertical prescale to 1/3. And once we do that, we can trim the top, bottom, left, and right until we hit the edges of the screen. And again, this gives us a perfect 320 by 224 picture. And this is the exact original resolution of a Sega Genesis game. So you've got that. And now you can apply any scanline effects you might want, and it'll look correct for the most part. However, there is one exception when it comes to the Sega Genesis Mini. Let's restore the default profile because it does mess up the menu. And in this case, it is going to be Shining Force. Oh. Now, Shining Force is a game that runs in, let's see if I have anything here. Okay, Shining Force is a game that normally runs in 256 by 224. And you... Sorry, excuse me. So because it runs in this resolution and not anything else, you do need to find a way to extract that using the HDMI receiver setup information. So let's do that. So typically what I would do is just increase this to 5. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is how it worked. Increase the input pixels to 5, output pixels to 3, and then go to the scaling crop menu and increase vertical prescale to 1/3. And what that is going to do is hopefully give us an original resolution once we trim everything. Okay. Okay, so this gives us 576 to 224, so that is not right. Typically what I would actually do is... Okay, that should be it then. Okay, so here we are. Increase input pixels to 15 and then output pixels to 4. And once you do your trimming, you'll see that you've restored the original 256 by 224 resolution. If you would like, you can either do a proportional scale or a freeform scale to try to get square pixels back into that. But this is just so that you're aware, this is how you get the original resolution out of that. Now, once you apply scanline effects, that should look more correct, only because it is, sorry, and this is going to be 2634. Because this gives you the sort of exact way a CRT would present this sort of picture, and this, and you've already gotten the original resolution of the game. Cool. So that takes care of two different methods for displaying games on the Sega Genesis Mini. Let's go ahead and hit the Super NES. And the Super Nintendo is going to also be a straight shot for most games. Most games present in 256 by 224. However, just so that you're aware, this is currently showing in 4:3. So what you want to do is, let's go ahead and save the suspend point. Sorry. Let's go ahead and go back into the menu to enable pixel perfect mode. This makes everything a square pixel, and that makes our life easier. Great, so now that this is in pixel perfect mode, it does look a little skinny, but we now know that everything is perfectly square pixelated so that we can go ahead and do some of our tricks. Let's go into the HDMI receiver setup menu and increase input pixels to 3. And then we press the scale button and go down to the vertical prescale, increase that to 1/3. And then when we do the trim, we're going to see that we get the perfect 256 by 224, and then we can make any adjustments that we want afterwards to get, as an example, a picture that closely resembles what this would look like on a CRT. So we're going to bring this down to 2634. And these are all things that have to do with pixel aspect ratio, display aspect ratio. If you just want to play your game, you can go ahead and just do that. So this is what this is like a really sharp version of what a Super Nintendo game would look like. It even has the built-in noise. The classic mini consoles have built-in noise because they thought that that's what people would want to see. And in this case, if you were to use scanline effects, this would be where you would want to start. However, there is one exception. And you do not need a hacked Sega Genesis, and you do not need a hacked Super Nintendo Mini to be able to use any of these options or to get this picture. My Super Nintendo is just hacked because I wanted more games on it. But as an example, the Secret of Mana uses menus that are in 256, that are in 512 by 224 instead of 256 by 224. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to increase the left and right trim a little bit, because what I'm going to show you is that what you do at this point, if you have a regular Super Nintendo Mini profile, is you want to hit the ADC menu. If input pixels is already at 3, 512 is double 256. So what you want to do is increase the output pixels from 1 to 2. And then you want to go to initial phase and make sure that you are looking at some of the other ones, because if it does not look correct in one of them like it does here, there's some stuff getting cut out. You might want to use the 2 or 3 just to make sure that you get the right picture. And now that we are back here, we can go ahead and fix our image up one more time. And as you can see, this restores 512 by 224. It's actually a good idea to leave when you play mana as this, because you, instead of switching between 512 and 256, you can just stay here for the entirety of the mana game and it will look correct. So this is currently in the 512 mode. I'm going to call myself M. And for example, this is in 256 mode and it's going to look absolutely normal here. There's not going to be any shimmering and everything looks correct because we've done the correct HDMI decimation and input pixels and output pixels. So that takes care of the Super Nintendo. Finally, we're going to go to the NES Mini. Okay, so the NES Mini is going to be in 256 by 512, but it is currently in 4:3 mode. I'm not sure if you see that because it might be a little messed up, but let's go ahead and fix that. Well, first let's save this there and go into the settings. As you can see, it was currently in 4:3, so we want to put it in pixel perfect mode. This says pixel perfect. And when we go ahead and load the game again, it'll change. Everything looks much skinnier. For the NES Mini, because it's a perfect 3:3 scale, we can go ahead and increase input pixels by 3, hit the scale button, increase vertical prescale to 1/3. Nothing changed. I don't like to adjust the top trim and bottom trim on NES games only because they tend to use the overscan at some points. Even NES games will use the overscan, so I will just use the left and right trim to get the 256 resolution. And then you can use these settings to go from whatever this was doing to 2634, which is the display aspect ratio size for the NES. And this is basically correct or accurate to what a CRT might present, like a perfectly calibrated CRT might present. So that takes care of 5 different mini consoles. As I mentioned, I don't have other ones such as the TurboGrafx Mini, but that should be very similar to the NES, so the Super NES. And I do not have the Sega Genesis Mini, but that is also very similar to the Sega Genesis Mini 1. These are all included as profiles on the RetroTINK-4K SD card, which you can find on the RetroTINK GitHub as well. So you don't have to do this every time you play your mini consoles. You could just go ahead and load up a profile whenever you want. But other than that, I think we are done here with optimizing and extracting them. You cannot do it for all of them, as you saw for the PlayStation and the SNK, the Neo Geo Mini. So you may have to just play around or just accept that, just plugging in and playing is the thing that you might have to do. But other than that, we are done here.